Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at Moza AirCross 2. This is basically a smaller, lighter and smarter version of the gimbal that I am currently using, which is the Air 2, so that sounds very promising. I have tested this gimbal with Sony A7III, FE 24mm f1.4 GM, Tamron 28-75 as well as some other setups. In this video we will take a look at the performance and feature set of this gimbal, and I will try to explain why is this the gimbal that probably makes the most sense to buy for the most DSLM users. Besides that, I will be comparing it a bit with Moza Air 2 and Zhiyun Weebill Lab. AirCross 2 is designed for mirrorless and DSLR camera setups up to 3.2 kilograms. The gimbal itself weighs just 950 grams, so that is very good weight to payload ratio. I can say that the advertised payload is much closer to reality than with some other brands. It is definitely sufficient for Sony A7 III, Panasonic GH5, Fuji X-T3 and similar mirrorless cameras. It should also work with Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. If you shoot with Canon 1DX Mark II or something like Sony FS5, you should still get the Air 2. AirCross 2 weighs 650 grams less than the Air 2 and it is noticeably smaller, which is mostly an advantage. I will talk about that later. It weighs roughly the same as the Weebill Lab, but it is not as compact. The build quality is very good. The upper part is made of metal and the lower part is made of high quality plastics, and there are some metal pieces as well. It feels good overall, and I especially like that the motors are protected by rubber layer. Included table tripod is also super high quality. It is actually metal with very nice texture on the outside, so it works great as grip extension. The balancing process is very easy with the AirCross 2. It has locks on all three axes, which makes the balancing easier, and it is very useful for transportation. One difference in comparison with most gimbals is that the tilting axis is balanced next to the motor. All of the axes are easy to move, so no complaints here. The L bracket that holds the camera can also be completely removed, which is convenient for traveling. It can also be mounted vertically, which is extremely useful if you shoot high production value Insta stories. All three axes have unlimited motion range, which is great. The roll arm collides with pen motor in some configurations, but that is a price for the mounting options, so I can live with that. AirCross 2 has great motor auto adjust function that will shake all of the axes to figure out the best motor settings. Unlike on some other gimbals, it works flawlessly on AirCross 2. Besides the Arca L bracket, AirCross 2 also comes with Manfrotto PL501 style plate. It also has quick release system, so you can take the camera off the gimbal and mount it back again without rebalancing, which is great. AirCross 2 comes in hard foam case. It protects the gimbal very well and the size is also reasonable. Proper travel case that comes with Air 2 would be nice, but hard foam case is completely fine in this price category. Besides the gimbal, case and tripod, you will get the battery unit, Manfrotto quick release plate with follow focus attachment, Manfrotto quick release system, lens support piece with a screw, and a case with cables for attaching all kinds of cameras. So how about the stabilization? To put it in a perspective, Moza Air 2 is currently my benchmark for stability and smoothness. The Weebill Lab is the benchmark for portability, but its performance and smoothness is definitely not at the Air 2 level. So I basically wanted to find out how much performance will I lose in comparison with the Air 2 and how much smoother than Weebill Lab it will be. I am happy to report that with A7 III and 24mm GM, I was still able to get that flying camera smoothness typical for the Air 2. The motors are indeed very strong and responsive. I am especially surprised by the results that I was able to get while walking on rough surface. That is something where lighter gimbals such as Weebill Lab usually struggle because heavier setups are usually more stable, but the AirCross 2 performs very well. The panning and holding the camera still is just as good as with the Air 2, so there are no issues here. Air 2 still stays the most capable gimbal that I have tested. It is subjectively still a little bit better in more extreme situations, but the AirCross 2 is way more than stable enough and it provides the best ratio between the weight and the smoothness. So the answer to those questions is that you won't lose much of that Air 2 smoothness, but it is significantly smoother than the Weebill Lab. One thing that contributes to this, and that is extremely important for me personally, is that I can adjust all of the motor parameters using the screen on the device. You can just turn the dial to adjust the follow speed of all axes or set follow speed on individual axes in the menu. You can set everything, including the dead zone and joystick responsiveness, in the menu. This is extremely useful because those are the most important settings in my opinion, and using the app to set those is just not convenient enough. For me, that is nothing short of a game changer, and I can't really imagine using Gimbal without this option anymore. Regarding the controls, you have the on-off button on the wheel, rotating dial with 5 buttons, a joystick, controller wheel and trigger button. There is less buttons in comparison with Air 2, so now we enter the menu by long pressing the button in the center of the frame. What I also like a lot is that you can set up the functionality of the trigger button and the controller wheel, again without using the app. That might sound obvious, but I don't think that it is possible on any other gimbal. I use the trigger button to lock all axes, double press for resetting the gimbal position, and triple press for selfie mode. I set up the wheel to control the roll axis. I also prefer this type of joystick over the flat joystick that are usually on other gimbals. The screen is pretty small but sufficient for changing all of the settings. I also like the grip on Air 2. It is sufficiently long so you can choose where you want to hold it, and it is also well shaped. The battery part is rubberized so it won't be slipping. As I mentioned, included tripod/grip extension is also very good. There is an option to control the camera using the buttons on the gimbal. A ton of cables is included, so you should be able to connect any type of camera. I've tried it with Sony A7 III and it worked pretty well. I was able to control exposure settings and start and stop recording. As I mentioned in other videos, I don't use remote control on Sony though, because it disables in-body image stabilization, which is against the common sense, so Sony should fix that. AirCross 2 also supports motion tracking. That means that you can mount your smartphone to the hot shoe of your camera, launch the app and draw a square on an object that you want to track. It works really well, and for inexperienced gimbal operators it will probably provide better results than manual tracking. Just like with the Air 2, the smartphone app is great. It has the most complete parameter settings, so you can change everything on the gimbal. There is a remote control as well that is pretty standard feature. It also has great interface for setting motion lapses. Everything works through Bluetooth, so you don't have to use Wi-Fi. Overall, big thumbs up for the app. One more feature in the app is the mimic mode. That means that the gimbal will follow the movements of your phone, so it is basically a sophisticated remote control. It is definitely a cool feature, and with some practice it is probably possible to get good results, so I will definitely give it a try in the future. There is also a desktop app which works great. It has the same settings, but it is probably even easier to operate, so thumbs up for that as well. The best thing about the app though is that you don't even need to use it besides the firmware update, because everything can be set using the controls on the gimbal. There is 1/4 inch and 1/3 of an inch mounts on the bottom side of the gimbal. I use those for the tripod/grip extension. There is also 3/8 of an inch mount on the front side of the gimbal with rosette that you can use to mount a monitor or some other accessories. AirCross 2 uses new battery system. It uses these cartridges, and what I like the most is that you can change those in the gimbal, or you can take them out and connect the battery itself to the charger using USB-C. That is, in my opinion, probably the best possible solution. The battery life is rated for 12 hours. It will definitely last the typical day of shooting, probably not 12 hours, but the battery life is still great. To sum up, I can say that this is the first gimbal where I actually wasn't able to find any major negatives. It provides great smoothness to weight ratio, usable payload is sufficient for a majority of setups, and it has great controls, especially the follow speed and dead zone settings on the gimbal. The build quality is okay, and I really like the battery cartridge system. Unless you use a very heavy camera setup, I would probably recommend the AirCross 2 over the Air 2 for the most users. The Air 2 is still the most capable gimbal that I have ever tested, but the AirCross 2 will be more than sufficient for a vast majority of users. Regarding the Weebill app, that is still the most portable camera gimbal, but that is basically the only advantage of the Weebill in comparison with AirCross 2. That is a very significant advantage though, but it can't support heavier setups. The AirCross 2 is significantly more stable, it has better controls, and you will probably get better results with that one. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.